Hey, what's going on everybody? Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I'm really excited to knock out today's content because we're going to be talking about music theory. In today's video, as the title suggests, we're going to be talking about what I feel as though is the most important mode to learn for not only guitar, but music in general. And I'm going to show you where it is on the fretboard in a specific tuning. And then we're going to talk about why it's the most important and how to use it and how to write with it and all the above, okay? Long story short, we're just going to be just jamming, hanging out, and talking about some theory. And I hope you guys learned something today, okay? So if at any point in time you feel like you learned something during this video, if you could like this video, it would just really mean a lot to me, and it would just be great feedback because it lets me know that, hey, you guys enjoy this type of content, okay? And subscribe as well if you haven't done so. Thank you so much in advance. I really enjoy creating on my channel. My channel's awesome, and it would just mean a lot, all right? So, cutting right to the chase, what is in fact the most important mode in music for guitar? It is in fact the Ionian mode. I feel as though all musicians and all guitar players need to have the Ionian mode absolutely mastered for several reasons. The first reason is it is in fact the major scale. So Ionian is just a fancy way to say major. The second reason why I feel as though Ionian is very, very important is because all of the other spellings and alterations with the other modes are all deviations from the major scale. And we're going to talk about that here today. So what is the Ionian mode? What is the major scale? How do we play it? How do we do it? Well, it's actually a series of whole steps and half steps. Ionian / the major scale, I'm just going to call it the major scale the majority of this video. It's the same exact thing. Ionian is just a fancy way to say major scale, okay? The major scale has a very specific formula and a set of whole steps and half steps. If you follow this sequence, it just manifests a major scale every single time. So I'm in drop D right now as I am a rock and metal player, so let's just use the open 0 note, the low D, as my root note here. So I'm going to take the whole steps and half steps. First I'm going to show it to you guys, and then I'm going to put it on my fretboard. So the sequence of whole steps and half steps is as follows. Whole step, half step. Whole step, half step. I'll say that again. Whole step, half step. Whole step, half step. You follow that sequence of whole steps and half steps. You start on a root note, and then you just follow it. It just manifests a major scale, okay? So, taking the low D as my root note, let's just make a major scale going up the fretboard on one string. So, root note, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. And then if you notice, I'm at the octave, meaning I've completed the scale, and now I'm essentially starting over on the octave if I were to continue to keep going up the fretboard, for example. So obviously I'm doing it on one string and I'm in a drop tuning. There's a very specific reason why I'm doing that. As rock and metal players who drop tune their guitars or down tune their guitars, we always do this trick where we drop the low string, and then, you know, now we have essentially a power chord at the ready at any given point in time, right? The reason why I'm showing you the major scale, the Ionian mode, on the low string is because, generally speaking, most riffs in rock and metal music are heavily using the lowest string as well as the open chug. Like, that's just what we do in this genre, right? So when I'm playing in the Ionian mode, I showed you the whole steps and half steps. What I'm also doing is I'm doing a mental calculation where I'm like just literally looking at the frets as like, these are the good frets. I can hit these frets if I want to play in major, D major, for example, since we're in drop D. So those frets are 0, 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 12. And now I'm going to take a little bit of liberty. I'm going to turn them into power chords just because it's fun. So I have written a lot of songs in this mode, in this key, however you want to talk about it. And I feel as though it's incredibly beneficial, not only because it's important to know the significance of Ionian, but also too, in a drop tuning in a rock and metal context, I think it sounds pretty sick. Why is the Ionian mode so important? Why is the major scale so important? Well, like I just said a couple minutes ago, I'm just going to say it here again. Everything can be reverted back to the major scale, especially as it pertains to modes. I found this chart on the internet. I'm going to put it up on the screen right now, and it's all 7 of the modes in sequential order. Just real quick, sidebar here. All the modes go in order. They don't deviate. They don't change. It goes like this: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. All 7 of those modes are fixed, meaning like Phrygian's always the 3rd mode in reference to Ionian being the 1. Lydian's 4, Mixolydian 5, Aeolian, Locrian, Dorian. I forgot about that one. Dorian's 2, etc. Like, just like we count numerically 1 through 10, for example, or like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, the alphabet is set in stone. The numerical counting system that we have in life is set in stone. The modes are set in stone as well. There's a specific order, okay? So getting back to the chart, if you notice, look at Ionian. It's just 1 through 7, right? It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then looking at all the rest of the modes, there's alterations. There's like flat thirds and flat sevenths and sharp fourths, flat twos, all the above, right? Well, what is being represented here on this chart as a good visual aid for you all is that in order to make one of these modes, other than Ionian, you have to alter them in such a way, in such a specific fashion. So to further explain what I'm saying, let's compare Ionian to Dorian, for example. The spelling of a Dorian mode is flat third, flat seventh. Well, what third are we flattening and what seventh are we flattening? Well, it's in fact the major scale. So you take the Ionian mode, the major scale, again, just so we're not confused, Ionian and major are interchangeable. They're saying the exact same thing, okay? So we take the major scale, the Ionian mode, and then rather playing the normal third, for example, we would play a flat third, meaning the third note in the sequence is back a half step. Do you see the picture I'm painting here? That's why Ionian is so incredibly beneficial and so important, because all the other modes are alterations of the major scale or the Ionian mode. So in order to understand like, oh, Phrygian's flat 2, flat 3, flat 6, flat 7, you have to understand what the baseline is to begin with. You know what I'm saying? Like Ionian major is the baseline mode and all the other modes are altered in such a way. And, you have to know the baseline in order to know what you're altering and how to alter and where to go. So now the next part of this video, what I want to do is I want to show you guys a song that I think is probably one of my best pieces of original music that I've ever written. And it's in Ionian all throughout, like the rhythm sections, just like pretty much Ionian to a T. And that song is a song called Fission. I've had this song, for many years. I've been kicking it around, and I finally released it this past year. But it's predominantly in Ionian, and I wrote it in such a way with Ionian in mind. The Ionian mode, the major scale, it has a very kind of uplifting type of feel to it. A lot of people say major sounds happy. Well, if we're playing rock and metal, it doesn't necessarily sound happy. It sounds like empowering, uplifting, motivational, like heroic. Like these are all kind of just like adjectives that I feel as though like that's the emotion that it creates. But when I wrote Fission, it was pretty much like a conscious choice of like, I want to write a song that has these like kind of uplifting, heroic type of feelings to it. So the main riff goes like this. And what I'm doing there is I'm essentially dancing around a bunch of different like, notes and playing a little bit of melody with my ring and pinky finger, like but what my pointer finger's doing is it's holding down like the bass section of this riff, and it's always living on the landmark frets that I showed you in the beginning of this video. That is 0, 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 12. I consciously chose that when writing Fission because, again, I knew it was going to fit in the major scale, the Ionian mode. And I want to show you another piece of the song just so you can get, more context of what I'm doing here. The little bridge that I wrote here, again, is just using all those landmark frets. Again, looking at, breaking it down, looking here. I'm just using all of those spots on the fretboard, and they're all in D major. And just for another little piece of context here and a little piece of information, a D major scale is as follows: D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C sharp. It's got 2 sharps in it. So if you look at the circle of fifths, D has 2 sharps, and that is F sharp and C sharp. So putting it on the fretboard, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D. And I'm going to be real with you guys. The only way you guys can understand and comprehend the memorization of what a scale is, like a D major scale, for example, that's not going to come easy. You're going to have to put the time and the effort in to memorize that. How I did it is I made flashcards of all the natural major scales, A through G, and then I would sit there and flip them over and read them off like, you know, D major, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D, like we would do when we're in, you know, school, right? Like learning our times tables or, you know, learning whatever, man, whatever we use to make flashcards, right? So I just want to tell you guys that piece of information because this stuff's kind of tricky, man. You know, like memorizing scales and being comfortable in like knowing where you are on the fretboard as well as knowing what notes you're playing. It's pretty tricky, man. So like, it's not just going to stick if you just like watch a YouTube video or whatever. Like you actually have to do the time and the effort to study, okay? So everybody, to more or less wrap up this video, yes, Ionian is very, very important. You need to know Ionian. If you can memorize Ionian, you're just one step closer to memorizing all of the modes and understanding the ins and outs of the modes and how to apply them in different keys and how to use different modes inside the same key, all the above. But you got to start somewhere and you got to, you know, take baby steps and bite off a little bit at a time, and you have to start with Ionian, in my opinion. You have to start there, master that one, and then continue to build your skills and build your knowledge up top with modes. But you got to start somewhere. Start with Ionian because it's the major scale. And as I keep telling you in this video, the major scale is the most important in music. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Again, if you found this video educational and informational, please subscribe. It'd really mean a lot to me, okay? With that being said, everybody, I am out of here. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good rest of your day, all right? Later.